Zacznę od procedur azylowych.
Let me start with a question about the refugee status application. What does the procedure look like from the legal perspective? First and foremost, we need to be precise about the terms we use, because they are being blurred in the public opinion's understanding. The procedure of granting asylum and international protection are separate procedures in Poland. The international procedure is used the most often by migrants coming to Poland seeking refuge. These procedures allow us to grant a foreigner international protection in the form of refugee status or complementary protection. These are the forms of international protection. The basis for each of those is different. The refugee status is granted to those migrants who are facing persecution in their country of origin. The reasons for persecution include race, religion, nationality, ethnicity, social status, or political views. Complementary protection is granted to foreigners who could face a threat to their life or health in their country of origin due to war, torture, or inhumane action against civilians. These two forms are different. However, for a foreigner granted the international protection, the form of protection is not too important. His laws are similar in both cases. However, the asylum procedure is separate and different. Its basis is to grant a foreigner asylum due to national interest. An asylum application is proceeded by the Office for Foreigners, just like the international protection procedure. But besides the head of the office's decision, we also need a decision by Poland's foreign minister. These are the two separate procedures to grant protection to foreigners. It's important to mention that the application for international protection must be filed in person in Poland at a border guards department. The asylum application might be filled in Poland or beyond Polish borders as well. The process of being granted asylum is virtually impossible. It cannot be granted, but it's a legal procedure and no better procedure was introduced yet. That's a procedure where migrants could apply for asylum in a Polish embassy in Belarus. But is it really that hard to be granted asylum, or should they try in embassies instead of assuming it is not possible? They should not assume any scenario. Each application must be proceeded individually. International protection applications are also proceeded this way. The requirements are clear for both those procedures. In terms of asylum, Poland's national interest and the need for protection are priorities. In case of the international protection, these requirements are a bit different. At the end, it is also about granting protection, but the main basis is persecution and direct threat to life. But still, it's all about granting protection to a foreigner. If the refugees are getting to Belarus as a result of political action, they are being lured, lied to, and they want to be granted international protection, what should they do? I cannot talk about individual cases, but they should apply in person at a border guard department. This includes the departments at border crossing or in any other place in Poland, not only at the border, but inside the country as well. The question of crossing the border is complicated. It's about leaving one country, if they are allowed to leave, if they have the documents legally required to leave. And then, on the Polish side of the border, they have some possibilities. The border guards are responsible for the first crucial procedures after an application is filed. The foreigner's documents are being verified, interviewed, their fingerprints and photographs are being taken. The border guards are responsible for security procedures. If an application is filed in the border guards department, it is then sent to the foreigner's office, and its head is looking into it and making his decision. The Office for Foreigners is making the decision to grant the international protection. Please tell me what the procedure looks like once you get the application. The procedure to grant the international protection is structured, and I think we can point to three main elements of the procedure. First, we are carrying out an interview with the foreigner. We are verifying all the information in the application, as well as his migration history. The second element is verifying the documents, proving that he should be granted protection. For instance, proofs of persecution in his own country. The third element is to verify the situation in the foreigner's country of origin. These are the three key elements. That's what we look into to have a basis for our decision. The analysis of the situation in the foreigner's country of origin is crucial. For instance, foreigners from war-torn Syria are largely eligible for international protection, but in case of no such conflict in a given country, the applications are being analyzed more individually, and you're looking into the applicant's situation. We have special departments for a lot of regions in the world. For instance, Iraq, Afghanistan, Asia. We are ready to analyze applications from different regions. The inflow of migrants that we are facing now, mostly from Afghanistan and Iraq, a common problem is that these people have no documents. It is a big problem. While analyzing an individual case, we want to confirm their identities. If a foreigner has documents on him, like in the case of Afghan citizens evacuated to Poland directly from Afghanistan in August, these procedures are pretty simple, well documented, verified. These cases were simple, but some others are much more difficult. However, we are always considering all the elements and building history to make a decision. If a person is coming from Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, where the situation is tense, it's open warfare in many cases, if those people are positively verified, if we know they are not possible terrorists, a possible threat to our country, are they given permission to enter the country, or is it not guaranteed yet? It must be analyzed individually. It is not an automated process to be granted or not a permit to stay in Poland. Every application is being thoroughly analyzed, and we are taking a lot of elements into consideration. I mentioned before the persecution and a threat to life and health in case of a return to the country of origin. When we're talking about the regions that you mentioned, Afghanistan and Iraq, for instance, where most foreigners come from, as I said before, we cannot assume that these applications will be accepted or not. We can, of course, look at the office's previous decisions. When it comes to Afghanistan, most of the applications were filed by the 1,000 Afghan citizens evacuated to Poland in August. Most of these applications, although some of them are still being proceeded, were accepted, and these people were granted refugee status. But these cases were largely clear from the beginning, simple. The second biggest group recently being granted refugee status are Belarusians. The situation in Belarus since the contested elections in August 2020 is well known. We also analyzed over 70 applications from citizens from Iraq. This year, only 2 people fulfilled the requirements to be granted international protection. The rest of the decisions were negative. All the cases were discontinued. A negative decision could also be made when the requirements are not fulfilled. The people are not in direct threat to their life and health, but if the case cannot be analyzed thoroughly, for instance, if a person leaves Poland not waiting for the decision to be made, the decision is also negative. Is the number of migrants trying to get to Poland amid this crisis, and some of them to Germany, a way for them to get to the West? How do we know if they really need help because they are escaping war, or if they are not meeting the criteria? Of course, we are all looking for a good place to live, but how do we know if the migrants are not taking the place of refugees, depriving them of their possibility to follow legal procedures? In terms of using refugee procedure for migration towards the West, it is something we can clearly see over the last few years, usually by the Chechens, who were applying for refugee status and then going further into the European Union. The statistics of dropped cases are clear. It is a direct proof that they were not waiting for the decisions, illegally leaving Poland to go further. A foreigner applying for international protection must stay in the country where they filed their application. Poland, in this case, until a decision is made. They can legally stay in the country but not cross its border. The cases were being dropped, and it is a proof that the procedure is being used for migration to the EU. In case of citizens of Iraq, among the applications that we were analyzing, only 2 people were granted the protection. The negative cases were clear. They were quoting economic reasons for their migration. Of course, it's not wrong for them to want a better life, but the refugee procedure is dedicated to those who need protection from persecution or facing direct threat to their lives. Improving life quality cannot be a factor in granting international protection. We are dropping a lot of cases every year because they are not waiting for the decision. Let me also ask about the current situation. A lot of applications were filed already on the Polish-Belarusian border. Do you know how many were there? Where did those people come from? How advanced are the procedures? And how long does it usually take to make the decision? This year, we've had 6,700 foreigners applying for international protection, mostly from Belarus, 1,900 people, 1,700 people from Afghanistan, and 1,100 people from Iraq. We've made over 4,000 decisions. Most positive decisions were given to the citizens of Belarus and Afghanistan. These are the two nationalities that were fulfilling the requirements. In case of citizens of Afghanistan, as I said before, these are largely people evacuated in August. Around 1,100 people got a negative decision. Around 950 cases were dropped so far this year. Making the decision can take up to 6 months, but could be extended up to 15 months in very difficult conditions. The Office for Foreigners is legally bound to fulfill these time requirements.